What's up, PoE homies? J-War here with another video. So I want to show you guys this Caustic Arrow Occultist build I came up with. It's a budget magic find build, and now to get things out of the way, I put budget in quotations because it is expensive. It was very difficult. I've been working on this for a number of weeks now, trying to find a build that could do tier 16 semi-juiced content on a budget with magic find gear, and it was quite difficult. I tested out probably 5 to 10 different builds trying to come up before I came across this Caustic Arrow build, which seemed to do the best job. So anyway, it's about 30 divines for the build, which is kind of expensive. You could probably get down to about 20 divines if you really wanted, without awakened gems, without some of the, maybe one or two of the cluster jewels, and without the Watcher's Eye. So you can make some changes. You could also lower the level on vitality to do a different anointment, so you don't need as much mana reservation efficiency, but we'll get into all that later. I just wanted to showcase the build. What you're seeing here is just a regular tier 16 map, which it can basically fly through regular tier 16 maps no problem most of the time. Nothing really gives it too much trouble. You might have a little bit of trouble with some of the more difficult bosses, which I would argue maybe this boss is one of the more difficult bosses sometimes, but you'll see here the single target is pretty good, right? He's already halfway dead, and then yeah, basically dead now. So, pretty good single target. We do about 1 to 2 million damage depending on our buffs, what we have up at the time. We use a lot of auras to get a lot of benefit, and let me just talk about how Caustic Arrow works for a second. So as you might notice, we're using Arrow Nova support, which gives us insane clear at the cost of a little bit of single target damage. So you can take that up if you want, and some people do play the build like that, and you'll have much higher single target damage actually. I think you can get up to 2 to 3 million damage without Arrow Nova, but I found that the clear with Arrow Nova was just too good, and the damage was enough with Arrow Nova. And so I like going that way, and the way it works basically is you fire this arrow up into the air. Every target it hits, it is going to drop this caustic ground, and the caustic ground actually is what does our damage. The arrow hits don't actually do our damage, and that's what gives us such nice clear and such nice uptime on our damage, because as long as the monsters are standing on that caustic ground, we're doing the damage to them. So very good uptime on damage, and very good clear. We also have occultist explosions, which are very nice, as many of you know. So, very solid build, and we'll get into breakdown. I'll show you guys in the background here. We'll probably show a Delirious map, 20% or 40%, and some other things we'll go over about the gear. Alright guys, so I want to show you here, this is a 20% Delirious map with pretty much full juice. It's full sextants. I think we have ambush set up here with like some Harbinger scarabs. Just some cheap stuff I threw on a 20% Delirious map. It doesn't really matter too much what other, league mechanics we're encountering. It pretty much handles all league mechanics really fine. It's going to do Legion, which most people are interested in doing because of the God Touch monsters you're going to encounter. Pretty okay, and just to show you how it works here, we're using Biscos, so we're taking advantage of Rampage. So we get the Detonate Dead explosions from Biscos sometimes. You might be seeing some of that. And yeah, it just does pretty well. We are evasion based, so it's basically going to stay alive until we don't get hit. Now what you want to be careful about on this build is area damage hits, because we're going to dodge attacks for the most part, and we do have 100% spell suppression on the build. So spell hits we don't worry about too much. It's really just when those random physical attacks hit us, we have a little bit of trouble with that. Sometimes these little crows inside of the arena here on Crimson Temple can be a little bit problematic, but basically you're good until sometimes you might just get one shot. But we do have a Mortal Call for less damage taken. I was thinking about trying to fit in a Kintsugi chess piece, but it wasn't really possible, so which would have helped really nicely with our tankiness, but it feels pretty good, honestly. As you can see, we're going to go through this map. This is a deathless 20% Delirious tier 16 map with a lot of mechanics and sextants on it. The one thing you have to be pretty cognizant of your gameplay when you play this build, because you gotta really watch out for that area damage. But you have extremely high range on the build, and you shouldn't really be close to any monsters unless you have to be, and you should be able to give yourself room to dodge those big area damage attacks that come out very commonly from like Delirious stuff that happens in the map. So yeah, that being said, it's a really good build. I think we get up to, I don't know if I mentioned it yet, about 60 quantity and 300% increased item rarity. There are some things you could change up on the build to increase those numbers, such as using a Petrified Blood aura with Divination Distillate. We do have a Haste aura in, which is really nice because we also get advantage of Vol Haste. But you don't really need that. It's just adding some move speed and attack speed, which attack speed is almost irrelevant on this build. It does kind of give you a little bit more, but once you get the caustic round down, it's doing the damage. I don't think you can double stack and overlap the caustic round to do double the damage. I'm not sure if it works like that or not. Someone in the comment that might be a little bit more familiar with caustic round could let me know, but seems to be you can just get one puddle down at a time to be dealing your damage anyway, so a lot of attack speed doesn't really matter. It feels a little bit nicer, but not that impactful. And the move speed, obviously, you just move a little bit slower. And you could switch out Petrified Blood. You could probably also put in a Defiance banner in place of that 50% reservation from the mana for a 35 and a 10%, and then have maybe a little bit left over. So yeah, that's something you could do if you wanted to fit in a Divination Distillate flask in. We do use Blood Rage on the build as well, so you could also manage your life pool against the flask to always be in that life range where you're getting use out of the Divination Distillate. I will say it is kind of hard, and I'm kind of just killing this this Scourge boss here on the 20% Delirious map to show that you can do it. A lot of times it's kind of a better idea just to ignore those bosses because they take so long to kill and they don't usually drop anything too much, like maybe some tainted currency items, but half the time they aren't even that good, so you know. But you can do it, right? So I just wanted to show there that you can kill the Scourge bosses, you can kill Kosis, you can kill Omniphobia. Kosis is obviously a lot more scary usually than Omniphobia on this build in particular, so I would kind of recommend ignoring Kosis if you run into him on juiced maps, but you know, going through this map and it's deathless so far, you can see we've encountered quite a lot of League mechanics and it's doing just fine, right? You take a big hit every now and then, but a Mortal Call usually procs, and then you usually don't get hit again as long as you're positioning pretty well on the build. So all that being said, we'll go over the gear and stuff here in a second. I kind of want to just show you guys some more of the gameplay on the build, just to give you guys an idea of what it looks like. Now, this is a deathless map. I think, I was trying to record a nice looking map on the build, but sometimes it does struggle. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. It does struggle a little bit. A little Divine Orb drop there, pretty pog. It is, a budget build, right? This is the cheapest I could get a build together that could do this type of content without a headhunter, right? If we had a headhunter, and you could also throw inspired learnings on this build, it doesn't really do much for your damage, but mostly it's used for survivability, right? And that would give you a little bit added benefit, especially in tier 16 maps, and really you just need levels, and you could get the skill points to use Inspired Learning. You take the points around the Frenzy and Power Charge in the middle side of the tree, on the right side near Ranger, and you could get that Inspired Learning. You just anoint the Power Charge, anoint the Frenzy Charge, and then 2 more points there with Evasion Rating and something else. Anyway, I'll point it out later, but you could use 1 Inspired Learning, which would help tankiness there if you wanted to kind of upgrade the build a little bit. There are some things you could do to make it better, definitely. I wanted to just show you guys it is capable of doing tier 16. 20% Delirious maps is probably where I would keep it at. You can do 40%. It's not that difficult, but it is much more rippy at 40%, I would say. Sometimes you are going to get one shot just randomly a lot more often on 40%. So if you guys wanted to do some juice content with 20% Delirious maps, which I think there's actually a pretty good spot in the meta to just throw a Delirium Orb on a map just to get that extra juice and do Delirious maps without having to get because basically you're going to pay the same amount if you buy a Delirium Mirror Sextant as you would just throwing 1 Delirium Orb on your map. So I think the meta is in a good spot right now to do just 20% Delirious map farming with semi-juice investment. So all that being said, I've been ranting here for a little bit. Let's get into a breakdown of the gems and the gear and all that. Alright guys, so let's go through the gear real quick, give a quick breakdown of the gear and the gems, and try to show you guys everything about the build, just at a glance here. Obviously there'll be a POB uploaded if you want to look at it more in depth, but this bow, this is a deterministically crafted bow. I think Elishar had a video on how to craft these bows a long time ago. I know other people have done videos on how to craft them. You can basically guarantee crafting them. You start out by alteration spamming for the damage over time multiplier, and then some other things. I don't remember. Yeah, you spam for the damage over time multiplier, then you meta craft to add the +1 socketed gems, and then you Hunter Exalt Slam to add the chaos damage over time, and that's really where the value of the bow comes from, which you can hit up to tier 1 chaos damage over time, increase chaos damage over time. This one's tier 4, which makes it cheaper, which is really what you want. You don't need 30% more increased damage, or however high it goes. It's not going to add that much damage onto the build. Really, all the other things of the bow are more important. So Really nice bow there. You can get, there's a fizz damage version of this bow, which Corrupting Fever likes to use. This is the chaos damage version. The rarity helmet here, we don't use the synthesized helmet because we want mana reservation efficiency instead. Ascetic, we use this, and then we also use the normal item here is our quiver, and then the magic item is obviously going to be the helmet with our ascetic. Then we have Ventor Scambles. These are really nice Ventor Scambles. You're probably not going to want to get ones these nice for a budget build. You're going to want the elemental resistances though. You're going to want to get good elemental resistances and then kind of take a hit on the quantity and rarity, and then eventually maybe you could upgrade to better ones, but these are like 25 divines each. I have these because I moved them over from my other really expensive like lightning strike build, but probably not the best example to use admittedly on this build for a budget version, but you just take a hit on the quantity and rarity and get high resistances, and you'll still be able to get pretty affordable ones for probably a divine or two each. These rolls are kind of insane and really expensive. You're not going to want to get ones like that if you're trying to make it a budget version and keep it around 30 divines. Okay, gloves, just any despair on hit gloves. The attributes here are really important. Strength and dexterity, we need those for the build kind of, so try to get ones like this. You might not be able to. The other option you could do is you could grab some Hands of the High Templar. You could also get Temporal Chains on hit for your other curse if you don't want to use Sniper's Mark or another mark. You can kind of switch out the marks. We'll go over that a little bit later. Don't really get a whole lot of added benefit from the marks, but we don't really get a whole lot of added benefit from any other curse we could use either that's available to get easily. So we could use Blasphemy and switch out Vol Haste for for like a Blasphemy with a Punishment curse, which would be pretty good, or a Temporal Chains, or you could get Hands of the High Templar and try to get Despair on hit as well as Temporal Chains on hit curse effect, or curses applied. And then we just use Biscos. One thing you want to know about the Biscos is you do kind of need the strength of the Biscos, so you want to use this attribute modifier Catalyst to get that implicit strength up to 42 from 35, max roll up to 42. A little bit extra strength really goes a long way on the build to not have to take points in the tree to allocate more strength. And then gold worms, we just have a pair of 20% quant gold worms, pretty nicely rolled here. You don't need ones this nice. The most important thing is 20 quant. You don't really have to have an enchant on there if you don't want. And then, yeah, I think that's just about everything. Real quickly, I want to try to keep this short. We have some cluster jewels here. The cluster jewels are going to be about 1 divine each. These chaos cluster jewels, though, they don't really matter too much. A lot of times it's all the notables are either like somewhere between 25 to 30% increased chaos damage with some other kind of useful stat. Most of the time it's not that notable. Really just want to increase chaos damage. So there's a lot of options you could get for cluster jewels if you want to try to find a little cheaper one. As long as you get, you know, a good amount of percent increased chaos damage on all the notables, that's really the most important thing. And kind of the same thing here with the medium cluster jewel, right? And then these reservation efficiency jewels are kind of expensive though. These are probably going to be closer to 1 divine, and you're probably not going to be a much cheaper version of the small cluster jewels. So the jewels and really the gems are the most expensive part, as well as the bow of this build, and everything else is relatively affordable, relatively cheap. You're going to be talking about like in the chaos range of price versus the divine range of price for most of the other things. And just go over the gems real quick. In power support, this is the other big expensive item. You really need a +4 in power support. I think it's go for about 5 or 6 divines. So that's the last kind of big hit on the build that we're gonna have to spend some currency on, a good chunk of currency on. And then just these awakened gems, there are like even the level 5 awakened gems of these 520 quality awakened gems only go for like 100 C to 1 divine. And then the awakened Arrow Nova is actually the cheapest, which you can get a pretty nice one for about 100 C, a level 5 already done. And then a 2120 Caustic Arrow I think I got for about 100 C as well, not too bad. Okay, last thing I want to talk about is the chest piece, actually. I don't think we went over this. You want to get a fractured chest piece with evasion rating, energy shield, because we do need a lot of energy shields so we don't run out of mana with our energy shield situation. As you can see, if we fire quite a lot of times, we do get energy shield on kill, so it will come back really fast if we're killing things, but you can kind of run out of mana or energy shield because we're in Eldritch Battery, so you do want some on your gear, mostly here on the helmet and the chest piece we get a lot from. So the way you want to craft this chest is you want to get a high amount of fractured life on a decent energy shield evasion rating base, and then you want to roll Shrieking Essence of Loathing, here that increased mana reservation efficiency of skills, until you hit tier 1 spell suppression, and then that should be enough to get you to accidentally clicking out that there, 100% spell suppression on the build, which is really nice to have. Well, one other thing to mention here is the Wither Totem, which we do want to put down Wither for single target damage. It helps a lot. It gives a Wither stacks on the target, which increase the chaos damage taken, which gives us a lot more damage. So make sure you're putting Wither Totem down with faster casting and multiple totem support on it to give a little more quality life. And then cast when damage taken, Immortal Call. Pretty obvious there. Vault Blight, you can also use this to apply, what is it? It applies, it kind of helps with damage. It applies Hinder, right? Which also kind of gives us more damage. In hindered enemies take 20% increased chaos damage, so more damage multiplier there with Vault Blight. You kind of just press that with Wither on single target if you want to do a whole lot of damage. And a Hinder actually slows targets down too, so if you're really in a tight spot, you can kind of panic press Vault Blight sometimes, and it might help you out a little bit. And yeah, that basically covers everything. I don't want to talk about this stuff too much because a lot of the choices we have here as far as gems are somewhat obvious, right? But I did want to talk about them a little bit. So, all that being said, alright, let's move on and I'll talk one bit about how we roll our maps and some other things. Okay, so you want to be a little bit careful with how you roll your maps. Crit is a little bit dangerous. You probably don't want to do crit. That's kind of really where you can get one shot. There is no way to really mitigate crit damage on the build. One thing you could do is, not really. You can't really do poison and non-crit. You could do a corrupted chest piece with reduced damage from crits would be really nice, but you might want to go Kintsugi for that or something like that. Use a corrupted Kintsugi chest. You could go that route. You'd have to figure out a way to get your mana reservation efficiency fixed if you were to go that route. There's a lot of things you could do differently. I don't want to talk too much about what we could do differently because kind of just put out this version, and then people, if they want to try to adapt it, can kind of experiment themselves. I don't want to go over every possibility of what you could do differently, but there are a lot of things you could change and maybe have a different outcome. I haven't tested all of those myself, but I'm curious to see, really. I like nerding out about this stuff and trying to think about ways to make it better, right? But you could go that route because crit damage is a little bit sketchy, which was the main point I wanted to make there. And then some other things is you can't do no regen, but you can do LE Reflect. Obviously, we don't really do any LE damage. LE weakness can be a little bit sketchy. Vulnerability can be a little bit sketchy, but you can do it most of the time. And then really it's just no regen. And then the other one you want to avoid big time is reduced effect of auras, because especially when you run the Wandering Path, you're going to have 100% reduced effect of auras, right? Because you're going to take all these nodes, which the 60% is going to turn into like 97% or something with Wandering Path, reduced effect of auras. You're basically going to have no evasion rating, and you're going to get hit a lot, and you're going to die. So you want to really watch out for no regen. I think Fizz Reflect you might not be able to do because you do Fizz damage on hit with the bow. LE Reflect is probably fine. And then also no reduced effect of auras or no regen. I'm not sure which one I didn't say yet, but neither one of those you could do. Everything else is probably okay. You want to be a little bit careful of crits as well on the map rolling. So I think that pretty much covers everything I wanted to talk about. Like I said, recommended farms I would probably stick to 20% Delirious maps. You could throw this into a lot of Alch and Ghost strategies. Essences are probably going to be kind of tough for the build. It's not really good at taking down really big tanky enemies that are going to do a lot of damage, especially ones that are like teleporting on top of you, which I know a lot of essence monsters can do. You don't really want to deal with stuff like that on the build. Really, it's extremely solid build at just doing clear. Just doing clear and killing a lot of monsters. As you can see from the showcases, it was pretty good in just any kind of tier 16 map. And then Delirious, it could do 20%. It can do 40%. I would definitely not go above 40% though. 40%, you're probably going to start to struggle a little bit. 20%, you can struggle depending on the map mods. You need to be careful about how you roll the map mods with the build. Like I said, it is a budget build, guys. We do not have Headhunter. I really wish we could have Headhunter, but that was the whole point of making this. It's for people that cannot get a Headhunter this league and still want to do MF, right? And like I said, the other thing I would point out here is you can do Inspired Learning. You'd want to take this point here. You'd want to take, or you could take, you could figure out a way to get over here to the Chaos Rose. Would be really nice to have as well. But basically, you want to take these 4 nodes here, or maybe this one. Could even go this way. It depends on what you can fit in. And then you can throw Inspired Learning here, and that would probably greatly help your tankiness if you could fit that in somewhere. I mean, that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points to get all that. So you could take some stuff out and put that in. you do want to be careful, and I do have a lot of added health and percent increased health on the build, because if you get your life threshold too low, every single hit is going to be stunning you. And I think 3,800 was a pretty good point to get to. It's, you know, it wasn't easy getting to that point. We have like tier 1 double tier, or tier 2 life and tier 1 hybrid life on the chest piece. So it wasn't easy to get to. But yeah, you want to be careful about your life being too low. If you're getting stunned all the time in a map, it's probably because your life is too low and your stun threshold is very low. So you want to watch out for that as well. And I think that basically covers everything. I could just go on and on about talking about PoE builds usually, but I'll try to cut it short. The video is kind of already pretty long. But yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions. Let me know, too, if this is not the cheapest MF build that's out there. This is the best I could come up with. I did do a lot of research. I looked at a lot of builds. I looked at PoE Ninja. A lot of people were doing Caustic Arrow for cheap MF builds with no Headhunter. I know the Corrupting Fever variation is out there, but it tends to be kind of expensive. It's also pretty slow at clearing, but it is tankier in some regards. Different kind of archetype there on the defense where it goes armor and you're able to tank hits and you're not just trying to evade hits like this build. But anyway, I know it's comparable. I don't think that's as cheap though as this build, so let me know, because the whole point of this build was to find the cheapest version of being able to do MF for people that don't have a Headhunter, because I know the entry cost of acquiring a Headhunter is super high this league and a lot of people are really frustrated about not being able to get it, and I definitely sympathize with those people. I think it's kind of ridiculous this league that it's that expensive. And it kind of sucks that you know you can't do it. And I wanted to provide an option for people that maybe, you know, do have some currency to spend on a Magic Find build and want to try it out but can't quite get to the Headhunter level. So that was the whole point. So if they're getting back to getting back to the original point, if there is a build that you guys know of that's cheaper or more efficient than this build at doing MF, let me know, and you know, try to get that information out there for other people, because that was the whole point of doing this. So I hope you guys like this one. I hope you know, some people enjoy this build, try it out, have some fun with it, are able to do MF for this league, are able to do MF this league, Magic Find this league, that haven't been able to do it before. And yeah, that's gonna do it, and thanks for watching.